Hello folks, my name is Bill Galic and I'll be leading you through the coursework associated with the Introduction to Social Welfare. This is Social Work 106. This is the accelerated version of the course for the summer semester. So essentially we're taking a 15-week course and compressing it into 10 weeks. This is going to mean that you're probably working at like time and a half, so to speak, over the course of these 10 weeks. The School of Social Work has, I think, very wisely said that all material that is presented in 106 in the regular 15 or 16 week semester needs to be presented over the summer as well. So this is why we're working a little faster. Overall, I think you're going to find the coursework is still very doable, and the students who have taken this and other courses from me over the summer semester have rarely, if ever, complained about the workload. Now, there is a fair amount of reading in the class, but I believe that you'll find the reading is very, very useful to you, and we'll get into the textbooks in a few moments. But just wanted you to know that I realize that there's a faster pace for you over the summer, and I sympathize with you, but I really do have to present all this material to you in this short amount of time. You'll get full credit for the course, of course, once you're done, so that's a very good thing. A few notes for you as you listen to this presentation. I need to record lectures more frequently, I think. I have a series of recorded lectures you're going to find throughout the semester, and some of those lectures may have reference to the week that we're in, and some of them also, at least in my view, when you play the video, it shows a week such and such, chapter such and such. The chapter designations for the videos will be correct, but sometimes the week designation will not be correct, so don't let that worry you at all. That's because it's been previously recorded and titled for another presentation of this particular class, like the 15-week presentation. So ignore the things about what week it is if you see that in the video itself, or if I speak about that, because they'll sometimes be inaccurate. Secondly, I'm having trouble coordinating PowerPoint and Camtasia, which is my usual video recording and editing program this week. For some reason, I've just forgotten how to get those two programs to hold hands, and so I am using Keynote, which is an excellent program for presenting and making slideshows such as this and presenting them to you. But unfortunately, there's not an editing function in Keynote, at least unless they've added it since the last time I looked. And so you're going to be hearing me with the and maybe a few sniffles here and there. I have some sinus issues, so please bear with me with this and forgive me. I try to edit those things out when I can, but my editor's not working here. Also, you may hear in the background a whining and barking little husky dog, and that's because I've got him in his crate so that I can concentrate on this video and not have to get up and see what he's chewing up or where he's making a mess in the house. He's new to the family, and so we're going through our adjustments to each other. So forgive that if you hear it in the background and ignore it. He's really quite fine. He's just complaining because I put him in his crate. So on to more important things. I have taught this course really for close to the last 30 years now. This, in fact, was the first class, I believe, that I taught in the University of Alaska system at Kenai Peninsula College, maybe 1989 or 1990. It's really been a class that has evolved for me over the years. But interestingly, two of the three books that we're going to be utilizing are ones that I have used since the beginning of this course. Of course, they're new editions. But I switched from the textbook at one time and came back to the primary text that we use now because it was just so much better for this class. So I have a lot of experience presenting this material. I have formed some viewpoints and opinions over the years. I think it's safe to say that when you teach a class, it changes you and you, meaning me, learn things each time I present it as well. And so we're learning along together as we go through this class, but I do have some viewpoints that you're going to hear from time to time. It won't take you long to figure out where my political leanings are, and I don't, we do talk about politics here and there because it's really impossible to to talk about social welfare and social welfare programming in the United States without getting into the political implications of all the programs. If you pay attention to the news, and I suspect you do, you know that what they call, the Congress has been calling entitlement programs. That's what the Republicans call it, at least. They oftentimes want to cut entitlement programs, cut Social Security, cut Medicare, cut public assistance, cut food stamps. All lately, it's been cutting services to Planned Parenthood and even Meals on Wheels, and I think the school lunch programs or school breakfast programs have been threatened recently. So this is all in an attempt to balance the budget. And now I will grant you that Medicare in particular and Medicaid to a lesser extent do have a fairly large portion of the federal budget, and there'll be more about that as the semester goes along. But programs like food stamps and public assistance have such minuscule portions of the federal budget that when politicians talk to you about we need to cut back on welfare payments or food stamp and balance the budget, they're really kind of pandering to the conservative side of voters and not really offering you an honest assessment of how big of an impact those programs have on our budget. Now, Medicare and Medicaid do, but that's a commitment that was made by the federal government 50-some years ago. Well, we may see some changes in that coming up in the next year or so from the looks of things with the current political environment, but for the time being, at least, that is a fairly large portion of the budget. However, so are all the military expenses that we have around the world as well. And so, when it comes down to looking at the budget, it's really a matter of our values and what we want to take care of first and second, and all of those kinds of things. And so, that's something just to keep in mind. And so, when we do talk about, the conservative or liberal views of things, understand that it's an essential part of understanding social welfare in the United States. It isn't quite so political in other parts of the world, you're going to find out, but it is here. So just sort of a caveat for you from the beginning. Now on this screen you see that there's an email address, my university email address, which is the one that the university prefers we use. Just for privacy purposes and things like that. The other email address, my Comcast address, actually I'll probably see your email more quickly on Comcast than it will on the Alaska EDU address, just because Comcast is up on my computer screen and I check email routinely throughout the day. And so either one of these, as far as I'm concerned, is okay for you to use. Both of them are private. Currently, it's just the husky and me in the house, and he doesn't know how to read yet, and so he's not going to be reading any emails. And so you can write to me at Comcast and feel sure that things will be private between us. There are also phone numbers listed. The first is my Alaska cell phone number. I moved from Alaska a couple of years ago, now live in Northeast Indiana. And so you can use that if you have a phone plan that doesn't give you national calling privileges, those kinds of things. You have a local phone number there to call. The other is my home phone number, and you can also call there. Both of them have voicemail, so you can leave messages, and I will get back to you as soon as I can afterwards. Please do feel free to contact me if you have questions throughout the semester. Personally, I would suggest to you that email is going to be the fastest and most efficient way to reach me, but again, that's entirely up to your preference. As for myself, a few of you have had my class before, so this will be a little bit of repetition, and in recognition of that, I'll keep this description short. But for the rest of you, I retired from full-time employment in the social work field in 2014, and I had, prior to that time, 40-some years in the social work field. I went to school fresh out of high school to Michigan State University School of Social Work and got my BSW there, went to work in the field for 8 years, and then went back to school for my MSW, my master's, at Florida State University, which I received in 1983. And so I have been continuously employed in the social work field ever since I first graduated from college. And a lot of my friends say I'm one of the few people that are still doing what I went to school to learn to do, but it's just been a very interesting career for me. And one of the things that I was told by professors early on was to change your view. In other words, move out from job to job, not too quickly, but every now and then, every few years, consider a change of a position so that you get a different perspective. Because if you stay in one position and focus on one type of problem and in one type of role with your clients, that's one of the things that can lead to burnout, and so it's important for us to be able to get fresh perspectives sometimes, and so moving around a little bit in the field is a benefit to you. At the same time, if you can kind of keep a common thread in the jobs that you take, you develop an expertise, and that becomes very valuable to you and to your employers as time goes along. And so while moving around, also try to keep a focus on a particular area. For myself, my focus has been children and families, and I spent early in my career, my first couple of years, I was working in the public assistance office as a certification worker and as a food stamp certification worker as well. Sometimes we have to start out at the jobs that aren't exactly the ones we really want, but just to get our foot in the door. From there, I moved to child protection and worked in child protection for 4 years in Central Florida, carrying really large caseloads, and then moved over to residential care and residential treatment program for children called Great Oaks Village. It's now the Orange County Department of Children and Families, I believe, in Orlando. And it was a rather large shelter home for children who were removed from their families and were awaiting placement in a foster home. Because of the shortage of foster homes, a lot of those children stayed in this facility for a very long time. There was also a behavior treatment program when I was first hired there that I was hired as a caseworker for to work with the boys in this particular behavior treatment program. But after I got my master's degree, I returned to Great Oaks Village and became the supervisor for the counselors on campus in each of the cottages, and that included the shelter care, the long-term foster care, and independent living program, as well as the counselors in the behavior treatment program. So this facility grew to, I believe, 128 beds by the time I left there, and has grown into 2 or 3 other campuses around Orange County ever since. Although Orange County is a relatively conservative area in Florida politically, the county commissioners are very, very proud of how they take care of their dependent children in Orlando. So having done that for 7 or 8 years, that's when I made my move to Alaska, went to work for what was then Central Peninsula Mental Health Center, became Central Peninsula Counseling Services, and is now the Peninsula, it's PCHS, and I don't know what the letters stand for anymore, but worked at the Mental Health Center as an outpatient counselor for, I believe, 7.5, 8 years, and that again, focusing on children and families, although I did do work with other kinds of situations and other individuals as well. Then went back to what I felt like going home in a sense, went back to child protection on the Kenai Peninsula, supervising, the 3 offices for a period of time in Homer, Seward, and Kenai, eventually focusing on supervising protective services investigations in Kenai and also supervising the Seward office and all its operations there. After 19 years doing that, that's when I retired from full-time employment. Now, on a sideline to that, I began teaching for the University of Alaska at Kenai Peninsula College in the late 80s, early 90s, as I mentioned to you sooner, and have taught a variety of courses in social work, human services, and sociology department there. In the last 6 or 7 years, my work has been focused upon working for the UAA School of Social Work and really pretty exclusively now doing online teaching, for these kinds of courses. So I've been teaching online probably for the last 7, 8, or 9 years now altogether. So this is another area that I've felt like I've developed some expertise in. So that I've also worked in Big Brothers programs in 2 different states and have hosted 9 different foreign exchange students from Europe and China, as well as volunteered to assist foreign exchange students in other homes in my area while they were in their placement for the year. And so that really kind of opened my eyes to a lot of things about the world around us, not just America. And it was really kind of very interesting to hear the views of the young men that I hosted during their year in America, and how Europeans or Chinese saw America and some of our favorite obsessions like guns, for instance, and healthcare and those kinds of things. So over top of all of that, as a single dad, I have adopted 3 boys legally over the years, each of raising them as a single child, alone, so that I raised one boy and then took a few years off and wound up adopting another boy and took a few more years off and adopted a third son. Not intending all along to do this all my life, but that's just kind of how it's worked out. And all of those boys are young men now, and well, some of them aren't so young anymore, but they've all made it well into adulthood and have their feet in the society of America and getting along pretty well. So kind of sums it up for me right now. So just so you know a little bit about who it is that's presenting this course, and maybe that'll explain a little bit about why you hear what you hear from me. Okay, so first, a little bit about the books that we're going to be working on or working through in this class. This is your primary text, and this should be what the cover looks like in this text. It's 7th edition of A New History of Social Welfare. Phyllis Day is the primary author of this. Jerome Scheel has been added in the last edition or two. I think Professor Day has become kind of elderly, and I'm not even sure if she's working on the book anymore or not, but her influence is certainly still there. You're going to find that Phyllis Day is quite left-leaning, and this is what you would expect from somebody writing a textbook on social welfare for social workers. And she also is, I think it's safe to say, a feminist, and so you will see or hear her writing about some things and some viewpoints that may really irritate you, particularly if you're from kind of more of a conservative upbringing or lifestyle, so to speak. Some of what she has to say may distress and disturb you, and I say that's good. And I'm not because I want to change your mind necessarily, but because we learn most when our worldview and our picture of things is shaken up some. Now, you don't necessarily have to agree with what she says, but I hope that you'll consider some of her perspectives and some of the things she says if you don't agree with her, and give it some thought, because this is how we grow, and this is really what education is all about. So I'm looking for a textbook that might stir you up some, and this is one that will do that. Now this, just as the title implies, really kind of walks you through the development of social welfare programming really all over the world, but it focuses on America, of course, from back in the caveman days all the way to the present day. This book ends well into the Obama, I think the second Obama administration, and so she's not going to talk about some of the things that have happened since then, but it brings us up to that point, and hopefully, by the end of the semester, we'll have added a little bit about what's going on currently in the Trump-Pence administration and how that is affecting things as well. So this is your primary book, and the course really is set up sequentially with these particular chapters. I mean, there may be 1 or 2 chapters we read out of order, but by and large, we're going to be working through this book so that you see how social welfare develops over time. That's one good perspective, one good way of seeing this and understanding what social welfare is all about. The next book is a reader that I've added some years ago that gives you a perspective on what it is like for individuals who are engaged in the social welfare system, who are recipients and clients of the social welfare system. So you think I drive a Cadillac, welfare recipient's perspective on the system and its reform. Now, your textbook probably doesn't look like this if you get a hard copy, because the publisher has gone into some weird things with this book, and I don't entirely understand it, but they're publishing text on demand, and the cover makes it look like it's kind of a workbook or something. So if you do have a hard copy and your cover looks different, don't worry about it. As long as it's the 4th edition, you have the same book. If you're working out of the 3rd edition, it's probably going to be okay, but there's going to be some things in there or in the 4th edition that you're not getting, and I always recommend you use the edition that we're teaching out of for that purpose. Karen Seacom will give you a view of life as a welfare recipient recipient, and this is a very important perspective that I think we all need to have, and will help us understand a little bit about how all these historical changes in the social welfare program affects the individual. But again, particularly this focuses upon welfare recipients today. And she also spends some time kind of comparing our system to systems in Europe and other developed nations around the world. And that, again, is a very healthy thing for us to kind of see how we're doing. And it probably would be no surprise to you to find out we're not doing all that great compared to other places and around the world. But that has a lot to do with our political beliefs and our values in this country, and more on that as we go through. So this is I call it the ancillary or secondary text. It's an easy read. She's a good writer, so I think you'll enjoy this book. Finally, there is a small little book, and I know a few of you have read this for other classes, not necessarily in the social work department, or you have read this in high school, and it's called The Jungle by Upton Sinclair. And you'll see that this book was first published 110 years ago, or 111 years ago, I guess it is, something like that. And so it is a classic. Upton Sinclair, if you remember from your American history, in the early 1900s, was one of the authors that was being referred to as the muckrakers. And they were exposing problems in our social system in America while America was becoming an industrial power and world leader. What was happening to the workers that were being left behind. And Sinclair does a very good job of detailing the experiences of some immigrants who came over to the United States in search of a better life in the early 1900s, and all of the kinds of things that go on in that person's life. This book is very melodramatic. I will tell you the first 100 pages is a little difficult to get through just because it focuses upon a wedding ceremony, and there's reasons for that you'll see later in the book, but just kind of bear with it, and you'll find the book in the end brings home some very good points. And this is really connected to the progressive era in American social welfare development in the early 1900s. And so when we reach that point in the history, the day text, you're going to be turning in a short paper on this book. It's explained in The Jungle for you. But so this book you're going to read in the first couple of 3 weeks, and I would suggest you start on it now. And just read through it and get ready to write a paper that's going to just be a brief summary of the book, tie it into some course concepts that we've learned up to that point, and give me your own personal reaction to the story. So that's what a good paper is going to have, and that paper is only going to be 3 to 6 pages long. It's not a big deal. So again, more on that in the syllabus, and I think it explains what I'm looking for there very, very well. But once you've read that book, then you can set it aside. But one of the things that's really valuable about this book is it gives you an idea of what the United States was like before our social welfare system really got established. And Jurgis, the central character in this book, goes through just such a terrible, terrible series of experiences that one thing after another, this poor guy just can't get a break. And this will show you what it was like when we didn't have programs like workers' compensation or unemployment compensation or public assistance or Medicaid and those kinds of things for people that didn't have money. And so this is a good book for that purpose as well, to give you an idea of what it would be like if we just got rid of all these social welfare programs, like it seems the conservatives in Congress always want to talk about doing. So that's something you'll read that book and turn in paper. I think it's by week 4, if I remember correctly. The course syllabus, you should have found that in the course by now. It's and the link is there for you to download the hard copy of that syllabus, and as I mentioned to you in my introductory email, I want you to have a hard copy on hand throughout the semester. So please do print that out, read it, and see if you have any questions. Be sure to let me know. But it pretty thoroughly explains what's going to be expected over the next 10, 11 weeks from you. One of the things that's in the I'm sorry, I'm adjusting my headset here. One of the things that is in the course syllabus that explains how how you get your grade. Your grade is going to be based upon the number of points you earn, and there are many different ways you go about earning points in this class, so that if you're a good test taker, you have a chance to get points in tests. If you're not, well, the tests aren't that big of a thing. Now, the largest project here is the group research and written project, which is worth 150 points. And then there are 2 group check-ins that are worth, another 40 points altogether. And then discussion board posts on your classmates' group projects for another 50 points. So altogether, your paper and your classmates' paper and what you do around those things is going to be worth 240 points, which, what is that? That's, that's more than a third of the points that you can earn in the course. And so you want to make sure that you participate in this group project and that you get busy on it pretty quickly. I think you're probably wondering, if you've never done this before, is it possible to do a group project when you're online? And the question is absolutely yes. I will give you a site within the Blackboard course where you can join with your fellow group members to write up this paper. And you can exchange files there. You can communicate via email, those kinds of things as well. And so you'll find that group work is very possible in this setting. The frustration is when you're paired with a procrastinator. And if you're a procrastinator, I'm going to tell you now, please don't procrastinate, because you're going to drive your group partners crazy doing that. So please get on this project quickly, and we'll talk about that in a minute more. So altogether, 640 points, and then you'll also have some extra discussion boards during the semester that will give you an opportunity to earn up to 30 extra points as well. So, and if Blackboard tells you, Blackboard doesn't always understand bonus points, so don't get too bent out of shape if you're looking at Blackboard's percentages. Remember that your grade in the end is going to be based on total number of points you earn. And this is what it's going to look like. So, and this is a basic university scoring system, as you can guess. Okay. So, just a little bit about each grading element. Participation and attendance, I'm going to look at that by how whether you regularly and routinely, participate in discussion boards and your journal entries and those kinds of things. If you are, joining in on your group work and everything like that, if you're signing in routinely. And Blackboard tells me when you sign in, when you don't. I don't sit around waiting to see you signing in, but I can look in Blackboard and I have a way of telling when you've been there and when you haven't been. So you get extra 50 points just for doing everything in the class. And if you do less than everything, you'll get less than 50 points in the end, but that's how that works. Discussion boards. Now, if you haven't used online discussion boards before, it might take you a moment or two to get into the swing of things, but they're really pretty simple. And you'll find a link for discussion boards on the course menu. So you click on that, or actually what I prefer you do is there's a link for discussion boards each week in your weekly course content, and I prefer you access discussion boards through each week's content, and there's a reason for that. That is a good reason, but you can get there either way. And once you get to the discussion board forums, you'll find week 1, week 2, week 3, as the weeks go along, you'll find discussion boards that are available to you. You click on the title of the discussion board and then click create thread, and you can respond to the question that you're given. And then your classmates will read your entry as well, and will go back and comment on what you have written as well. And so you get points here by posting your original response within a week after the discussion board becomes available. So your discussion board will open each week, as will all the course content each week will open on Sunday morning. The new course content for the week opens up. By the following Sunday night, you should have had your original response to the question posted in the discussion board in a minimum of 150 words. That's not a lot of, that's a small paragraph really, but minimum, and you can please write more if you want to, because the more you write, the more discussion that it will generate. So you have to have your original response posted by the following Sunday night, and then by the Thursday after that, you should have gone back in, read some of your classmates' original posts, and reacted and responded to theirs. Now, your responses don't have to be 150 words, but they should be meaningful and substantial and meaningful. And what that means to me is, don't just say I agree with you, or I don't agree with you, or yeah, you have a point, or something like that. That's not really a meaningful, substantial response. So you might say, I've been thinking about what you said concerning, welfare mothers, and I agree with you. It seems to me that, that the society has been too hard on these women, and we need to give them a break. That's not really very substantial, but nonetheless, I want more than just I agree or I don't agree with you. Talk to the person, discuss it a little bit with your classmate. Okay, so you make 2 of those responses by the following Thursday after you have, so this is now 10, 11 days later, something like this, from the time the discussion board opened. And then I will be grading. I usually wait until all of this time has passed to grade the discussion board so that I see what everybody writes, because you'll get more or less points depending upon whether you make all these posts or not. So your original post plus 2 responses to classmates' posts will earn you 10 points each week. Now, this is a public post, so remember, public meaning everybody in the class can read what you write. Next, there is, and if you're going through the weekly course content, I'll show you this in a second, you will find a journal. It's called your weekly E-Scrapbook journal, I think. And with this, you click on that, and it takes you to a place where you write, you select a news item. This could be coming from media, but please make it a reputable source. Don't just take everything you see. Make sure it's a reputable source. And a lot about fake news lately, and that's a concern. I've had students that kind of respond to and react to fake news as though it's real, and I've had to say to you, you need to really assess where this is coming from and whether this is true or not, and evaluate a little bit about what you're reading, because sometimes what you read is a bunch of BS. And so anyway, you find some sort of personally, I prefer to see articles coming from newspapers and reputable magazines. But now, of course, a lot of stuff is online, and so social media, journals, magazines, newspaper articles, news reports on television or on the radio. You summarize whatever the item is for the week, and it should be related to something involving social welfare. So social welfare issues, civil rights issues, human rights, and social welfare issues. I mean, that's like, it can be almost anything these days, like not only public assistance and food stamps and Medicaid and Medicare, but could be public education, for instance. Certainly all the information, all the news we have about healthcare reform is all about social welfare. These are the things that we all benefit from. And so an article about those kinds of things, an article about human rights violations or human rights, supporting things, human rights actions, inequalities like the experienced by minorities, racial minorities, women, by gays and lesbians and transgender, those kinds of things. All this is fodder for this. So a brief summary of what the news story is, and then a paragraph of 150 words or more of your reaction to that. Now, you post this in the journal, and that is just between you and me. So if you have some things you want to say that you don't necessarily want to say to the whole class, you can do that here. To me, the discussion boards is sort of like, people raising their hands and talking about whatever the topic is, and other people responding to what they say. Whereas the journal is sort of like your opportunity to say, hey, can I tell you something? Or I want to, maybe you catch me at break or something, say, I'd like to talk to you about something and tell you what I think about this, So again, there's the difference between the two. And so you have an opportunity to address me privately as well. If there's anything disturbing you in the class material, anything, this is a good place to do this, by the way. But generally, most people just kind of take this to find this news story and then just tell me what they think, privately. So that's what this is about. Now, I want you to keep up on this. So this is sort of current events is what it is. And so if you post things late, you're going to lose points for that. I want you to, the idea is to have you scanning the news all the time throughout the semester and picking, because this social welfare topic is everywhere around you and all of the time. And so I want you to see that and see how these things all fit together in real life. And this is your opportunity to do that. So your journal will be 10 points each week as well. And so for the 10 weeks of the 10 study weeks of the semester, you between the journal and the discussion board, you earn 20 points each week, right? For each 10 points each for 10 weeks. So that's 200 points in your grading scale. There is a very thorough description of how your post can earn points in the first in this week's learning unit. I write about that, but also if you look in a section in the course menu on how your post will earn points. I'm sorry, that's the title of the item in this week's course material, but in the menu item is the board and journal grading guidelines. There are several different slides there that you can look through that will tell you all you want to know about how you earn points and how I evaluate things and those kinds of things. And by the way, in that section there is an excellent example of a journal, how I want the journal presented. And so do look at that and try to present your journal in that fashion, and you'll get your full points that way. Now the jungle, again, you'll read that, and I think it's week 4. You can look in the course calendar to be sure of that. You write a paper between 1,500 and 2,500 words. That's about 3 to 6 pages with standard size font. And I'd say use 10 to 12 point font, please. Summarize the book, give me your reaction to the book, and tie it into course concepts up to that point. And we'll only be like sort of halfway through the course by that time, but what we will have covered some basic course concepts that you can tie into the book as well. So that's how a full credit paper will be written. And you're going to find if you go to the assignments link on the course menu, when the time comes, there will be a link there for you to you click on the jungle paper link, and you'll be able to attach a Word document. Don't type it directly into the link. Type it up in Word and attach the Word document there, and then submit it through the assignments link, and I will read it and give you feedback and grade it there as well. 50 points for that. Talked about this earlier, your term research project. In this class, I will give you a topic of some social controversy involving social welfare thinking or programs or whatever it might be, and I'm going to assign part of your group to a yes or a pro position, and part of you to the no or a con position. Now, in a regular semester class, I will usually have 20 to 30 students in this class. This summer, I think we're going to have 8 or 9 people, maybe 10 at the last I looked. So the groups are going to be smaller, and I think what I'm going to do is make these groups of 2. And so you're not going to have a team working on yes and a team working on no. One of you will work on yes and one of you will work on no. And what you're going to do then is you present your paper together. So but within your group, whether it's 2 people or 4 people, you will present one paper. And so this means that each of you are going to depend upon the other to do your portion of the project, and your grade will suffer if the other doesn't work. So please remember that and take the responsibility necessary to ensure that your fellow group members don't suffer for your procrastination or any laziness you might be feeling. Okay, this is a very important part of your class. The paper, when finished, will be between 5,000 and 7,000 words. That's about 12 to 15 pages with the pros and cons of the topic. If you find early that your group partner isn't participating, my suggestion to you is, first of all, let me know, and I'll try to kind of prompt them to get busy, but keep in mind that if other people in the group don't participate, it's going to be up to you to do their work too. And so if you want the full grade, so be ready if you have a lazy partner to start working on the other side of the issue as well. Don't procrastinate. I can't say this enough. Get in there early. I would suggest you do this during. I will assign the groups in probably week 3. I want to give it a little bit of time to make sure everybody's participating before I put people together, because I'm truly going to try to avoid assigning you to somebody who isn't going to be in the class. Sometimes people just don't show up. They sign up for the class and then don't show. So I'm going to wait a couple of weeks to make sure that people are actually participating. Then I'll put the groups together. And once you are assigned to your group, you'll get an email. You'll be told about that. And please right away get into your group site, exchange email addresses, phone numbers, and those kinds of things so that you can contact each other. In order to encourage regular communication among group members, I will be looking in on your group, and I'll give you the dates when I assign the groups on 2 different occasions to make sure that you're communicating. And I will need to see in your work site in Blackboard that you're working on the group. And if you do that, you'll get a 20 extra points each of those 2 times. Those are our group check-ins. Now, sometimes students will begin to text each other and telephone each other, and maybe even occasionally groups have met together in order to divvy up things, and that's great, and I encourage that if you're comfortable with that. But understand that this portion of the grade can only be based upon what I see in your group work site. So even if you're doing those other things, make sure that you're putting something in a group work site, whether it be in your discussion boards, your group's discussion board, or because you have your own little private discussion board I get to look into, but the rest of the class doesn't, or the file sharing segment, those kinds of things. Be sure that you leave a footprint in there, and then you get your points that way. After you have submitted your paper, I will grade it, and I handwrite on the paper. It's just the way I do it, and then I upload it back into what's called your file exchange site, so that you will have privately have the graded paper back. You can print it out if you want it. If you want the graded paper with all my markings on it, you can print that out and keep it or not. But I will also take a clean copy that's without all my markings and everything of your paper, which will be submitted through Blackboard, through your group site. I'll take a clean copy of that and post it in a discussion board forum later in the semester, and then your classmates will read your paper and you'll have a discussion board on it, so that the same thing where original plus 2 responses, and the idea is to get all of you talking about each other's topics, as well as to give everybody the benefit of your research as well. So you're really going to learn from each other here as well, and you can earn up to 50 points in those discussion boards. That is towards the end of the semester, obviously, because it has to wait till the papers are submitted for that to happen. 2 tests during the semester. They're multiple choice questions. You can take it right in Blackboard. You don't have to go to any testing center. You don't need a proctor or anything like this. If you want it to be open book, it can be open book. The only thing I ask of you, and this is totally in the honor system, is to do this your own work, of course. Now, the first test is worth 40 points. Will cover the first half. The second test is 60 points, covers the whole semester. There's an array of questions, so that you get randomized questions. Everybody will have a different test, but from the same pool of questions. So that's one way to make sure that people aren't doing their test together. But also, I give you a second opportunity. If you don't like your first score, you can go back and take the test again. It will be a different array of questions, but you can take it a second time, and the higher of your 2 scores is the one that will be recorded. So trying to make this a user-friendly process for you. Again, multiple choice. And if you're reading, you should be able to answer the questions, but you'll have some time if you need to look up answers, you can, but not every answer, obviously, because the tests are going to be timed. And so for the 40 question test 1, you have 60 minutes. For the 60 question test 2, since it covers the whole semester, I give you a little more time, and you have 120 minutes for that. And so once you open the test, you have to complete it. You can't do 15 minutes and quit and go back to it and do the other 45 minutes later. You have to do it all at once. So when you open that test, be prepared to finish it, answer all the questions. Again, more on that as it approaches, but I think you'll find that tests are nothing to get too worried about, particularly if you're keeping up with the readings and listening to the lectures. You should do fine with them. But don't miss the testing close date. So when the test becomes available, I think it's week 5 and 10 10, I believe, is when they open. They open on a Thursday of that week, and they're open for 11 days. And so if it opens on a Thursday, then 2 Sundays later, by the end of that evening, that test will close. So you have 11 days to take the test and to take it twice if you want to. Once that closing date has passed, it's too late to take the test. And so you need to make sure that you take the test during that 11-day period. Some students like to go through it. I mean, again, I encourage you to read first, but some students like to take the test and earlier in that 11-day period, having read the material and everything, and then if they don't like the course, to go back and review some more things and go back and take it, later. But please don't wait to the last minute, because sometimes Blackboard, does what Blackboard does, and you can't take the test sometimes if you wait too late. So, because Blackboard might be down or something. So don't wait to the last minute on these things. Again, in 3 of the weeks, there's a second discussion board, so that you have the option there, or the opportunity to earn 30 extra points. And that may not seem like a lot out of 640, but it could mean the difference between an A and a B, or a B and a C. And you'll want those points as the semester comes to an end. So I encourage you to respond to both discussion board questions that week, and to strive to earn the 10 points in each of those 2 discussion boards. But it is optional. And when there are 2 discussion boards, you can choose to respond to either discussion board. Now, it isn't like one's required and the other's optional. You just respond to whichever one you want, or both. The course will open to announcements, and I encourage you, every time you open the course, to see if there's a new announcement. Announcements should be at the top of the list, and I keep all the announcements in there as they go out. And so always check to see if there's some new information. This is sort of the place where, if we were in a classroom together, before I'd start class, I'd say, I have something I need to discuss or to tell you about, just a heads up about something before we get into the class. This is your opportunity for that. Now, when I write an announcement and I put it in Blackboard, I arrange to have it sent to you at your UAA email address. So first of all, if you're not getting these announcements in your UAA email address, there's a problem with your address, and you need to get with IT about that. Otherwise, you'll get the announcements in your email. So double check to make sure there isn't something there that you haven't seen. And get with IT if you haven't seen it. But be sure to check your email regularly, because this is usually pretty important information, and just things I want. I mean, occasionally I'll send you out some additional stuff to look at just because I think it's interesting, but sometimes the stuff that's in here is important stuff that you need to know, and this is my way of communicating these things to you, so don't miss it, okay? So check your university email account regularly and frequently. This is really, really your responsibility to do that. The most important link, I think, in the class is called Weekly Course Content, and this is where you access all the material in the course. And I should have this slide in here, and I didn't put it in, but I sent it out to you in email, the array of the minimum kinds of things you're going to find in your Blackboard course each week. There's like 8 or 9 items. Don't miss all of the items. Like, for instance, when you click on discussion board, it's going to take you out of Blackboard, and you can't just click the next button to get back into the Blackboard again. You have to actually use your back button in your browser to get back to the course, the weekly course content again. And the same thing happens, I think, with journals as well. It's one defect in the way these tools are set up, I think. But generally, you can just use the right arrow to click onto the next slide. My lectures are recorded and are in the course content each week, and so what you're going to see, you're going to open up to a pane that is, or two, that is really it's my writing, and it's just kind of getting your thinking going in a direction I want you to think about as you go through the material. There's a pane that tells you about what the objectives are for the week. Then there's a pane that summarizes what your assignments are. It tells you the chapters you should be reading. This is also information that's in your syllabus, by the way. Out of the chapters you should be reading out of both books, plus I may have an additional assignment in the assignments link for you to read. You'll know that there. Occasionally there's a video you're supposed to watch. You'll have that link there. Then after that, you're going to come into my lectures, and there's a lecture for each chapter that out of the 2 books. They encouraged me some time ago to try to make more lectures and shorter in length, rather than one long lecture. And I think that works better for most people. So that if you have a 20-minute lecture and you want to keep going, then you just click on to the next lecture. But if you only got a half an hour, well, I'll listen to this 20-minute lecture and I'll get to the others later. It just kind of works out better. And so you're going to have from one, I think in this class, probably a minimum of, except for this week, 2 lectures a minimum, as many as 5 in 1 or 2 weeks. But most of those lectures are only going to be like, 20, 30 minutes, or many of them anyway. Now, we do have some lectures that are pretty long, like a little over an hour. But mostly you're going to find out that if you put together all the time of all those lectures, because this is really my recorded lectures, it's sort of like what I would be doing in the class if you were sitting there listening to me, right? And so for a 3-credit course that meets once a week, that's 2 3/4 hours of class time. Well, actually 2.5 if you don't count the break. But if I didn't give you a break, it'd be 2 3/4 hours class time. And so if you add up all the times in these lectures, and each of the lectures tells you, before you click on it, it says this one's 35 minutes long, this one's an hour long, this one's 15 minutes long, whatever. If you add up all the times each week for those lectures, you're going to find that maybe on one occasion it goes over that 2 3/4 hours, but not much over it either. It's pretty much the time you'd be spending in class with me. So consider this class time, those lectures. Now, sometimes in the assignments you have a video. One video is 2 hours long, another is an hour long, and the lectures combined with that still really don't go over the 2 3/4 hours usually. So while it seems like there's a lot of things to listen to, the time it uses up is pretty much equivalent to what your class time would be. And in fact, in several weeks, it's a good hour less than what you'd be spending in class. So don't be overwhelmed by the number of lectures that are there. Once you finish the lectures, then the next link is the discussion board link, and you just click on the course title and it takes you right to the discussion board, and you can find the form for that week and click on that and go from there. I put the discussion board link. I didn't used to put it in the course menu because I want to make sure people actually read and listen to the lectures before they respond to the question. Because what students will do, and you may be tempted to as well, is just to click on the discussion board and get that done and then worry about the lectures later. And the whole point is that you're supposed to be having thought about all this stuff before you start responding in the discussion board. So I have put the discussion board link and journal links in the course menu because students were saying, when it's time to go back and respond to my classmates' posts, I don't want to have to click through all of those slides to get the discussion board link again. So it's there for your convenience, but please don't abuse that shortcut in the link, and try to access your discussion boards having worked through the other slides first in your weekly course content. After the discussion board, remember you're going to have to use your back button to get back into the week's content. Then you're going to find the journal. It's called the Weekly E-Scrapbook. You click on that title and it will take you to the place where you can submit your journal entry. Click on your back button when you're done with that. You'll find another slide that has you can access the copies of the PowerPoint or Keynote slides that I use during the lectures so that you can print them out if you want to, or you can refer back to them later for review purposes. Of course, there's no sound associated with that, it's just the slides. And then after that, there is a closing pane or two of my writing. Again, please do read them. I have spent time thinking about this, and again, it ties things up in a way that I'm hoping as your professor, so to speak, that you will be able to kind of integrate what it is that you've worked through that during that week. Now, I will tell you, this is an online course that is asynchronous, so we have no times where we actually meet together. But even online, we don't have a collaborate. So this is really up to you when you do the work. That doesn't mean that you can wait 3 weeks and catch up, because if you've kind of got the drift here, you need to do your work every week. So consider that you have flexibility within the week to decide when you do the work between Sunday and Sunday, and don't postpone work for 3 weeks and then go in and think everything's going to be okay, because we are working through this material together. We're talking about things at the same time. We're going through the journals, those kinds of things. So remember, get your work done within the week, each week, and you'll be okay. As long as you stay on top of things, you're not going to find this work too difficult at all. Now, we know about netiquette, right? I mean, we don't hear, we don't get to see body language, we don't hear tone of voice, we don't see, how where our eyes are directed, whatever, when we post things. And so, what people see are what you write, and they don't know what your intent is. If you're being kind of like sarcastic, if you're just kidding, or those kinds of things, and they're not going to know that. And we don't use things like LOL and LMAO and OROFL and all those kinds of things. We don't use them in university communication, and this is university communication. So don't use chat, don't use emoticons in your posts. Use words, and use those words in a way that people can understand what your intent is. Be careful not to offend people. Don't ever be sexually suggestive or abusive in your language, anything like that. If somebody says something that irritates you, maybe try to just forgive what they have said, because sometimes we say things we don't really intend it the way it's being taken. But if you find someone is being abusive, please do let me know, and I will deal with that student. Title IX also includes sexual harassment and those kinds of things as well. And but anything of concern to you in terms of an individual's interaction with you in the discussion boards, or the journals between you and me. Certainly, if there's something I've said, but it's more likely to occur in the student forums. Be sure to let me know. Now, this week's discussion board is just sort of an icebreaker, and it's pretty self-evident. Who are you and what do you like? And these are just some things that you might say about it. You can just go freeform on this. Please introduce yourself to the rest of the class, because this is your opportunity, to know who else is in the course with you. And remember to go back and read your obviously, if it's going to be an icebreaker, you have to read everybody else's posts anyway to see who they are. But remember, you're going to respond to at least 2 of those responses. You can respond to all of them if you want, within the time frames that I had discussed earlier about discussion boards. I also want to encourage you to consider including photos in your discussion boards. That's entirely optional, but sometimes it just makes these, particularly this kind of thing, a more interesting kind of a thing process. Your first E-Scrapbook entry. So this week, watch for news for current events related to social welfare or civil rights, like social programming in government, the budget, the state budget or the federal budget, education, civil rights, racism, sexism, healthcare reform. Immigration's a big topic these days. Healthcare reform's a huge topic these days. Same-sex marriage and gay rights are all out there being reviewed by the courts and the legal system and everything. All these kinds of things is constantly in the news. So pick an article and write about it, and then summarize the story with a reaction of at least 150 words. The reaction paragraph should be posted by Sunday night of the next course week. Now, one more thing about the discussion boards and journals is the discussion board. I really consider this to be discussion between students. And so while I will chime in from time to time on the discussion board, you won't see me responding all of the time in discussion boards, and certainly not to each individual every week. So the discussion board is really for the class to talk about things together. Understand, I monitor and read what you write, but I may not always respond there. In the journal, in your E-Scrapbook, I will try every week to make a personal response to your post. So again, remember, the journal is where you and I talk back and forth with each other. You can set up your discussion boards by subscribing to your thread so that you get a notice when somebody responds to you. And you can go back in then and respond to their response. Again, the whole idea is to get a discussion going, so I hope you'll make use of that. In the journal, there isn't any way that I know of, at least, that you can get notice that I have responded. You can figure that I will have reviewed and read and responded to your journal within 2 weeks after you've made the post, if not sooner than that. It just depends on what all is going on in the class as I'm reading papers and taking care of my barking husky and things like that. So he is very time consuming right now, by the way. But anyway, I will make an effort to respond to your journal every time. You won't get a notice of that. So I do hope you'll go back a couple of weeks after you've made your journal entry and read what I've wrote, because I really do try to post something there that might be meaningful to you. So, and again, remember, this is an opportunity for you to discuss things more privately with me if you wish. Okay. So you have some readings. Well, actually, you don't have readings this week, but in next week's assignments, you're going to have you're going to be reading the first 3 chapters out of the day textbook, so you could get started on that if you'd like. And when you do that, her 9 American values that she talks about in chapter 1 are some key concepts that you're going to carry with you throughout the semester, and you can tie them into your jungle paper, for instance, and they're going to turn up in discussion boards questions from time to time. So pay attention to the 9 American values, because they're really a key element in understanding what is going on in America about social welfare. So that's what I have for you. Here it is, an hour into this lecture, and it's a little longer than I had hoped to make it, but that's the way it goes. And I can't edit here, so you're going to have to listen to it all, I guess. So, but hopefully it's been tolerable for you. I think I've covered everything, but if you have any questions left, please, first of all, check the syllabus and see if you can get the answer in there. And check like the boarding journal grading guidelines link in your course, that kind of thing. Also, there's a lot of questions answered there. But then if you just can't find the answer, write me or call me, and I'll try to respond to you. And I'm not saying don't write and respond to me until you've done these other things, but you'll find usually the answer to what you have in those other things. So, okay, I think it's going to be a great semester, and I think you'll like this material. It's really one of my most favorite classes that I've ever taught, and so I think that will show as the semester goes along. So that's it. That's the only lecture you have this week. Finish up the other slides in this week's weekly course content. And week 2's weekly course content will open up Sunday morning, 12:05 a.m., as it will every week thereafter. The new weekly course content opens up every Sunday morning for you. Okay, take care. Good luck in the semester, and we'll be in touch.